Okay, so as usual, I'm putting all the code at the start here in case you just want a quick and easy solution to look at and to adapt to your own project. So as you can see, I've written a function which will take a file, in the case this characters info text file here, and it will create a list of lists where each of the lists represents the information for one character. So I've chosen Power Rangers. I don't know why, I was just feeling nostalgic. But as you can see, you've got the Power Ranger, their real name, and then you've got this line here, which is just a bunch of random information. G for good, E for evil, and then some numbers. Maybe that's battles won, battles lost, whatever you want it to be. But basically, the function will import the text from the file, and then it will break it down as you can see here. So feel free to pause the video and use it as you like. Otherwise, let's go through and do it together. So we're going to say define read file, file name. So as usual, when you're writing a function, try to use verbs in the function name as much as possible, because that's going to be the clearest to other people reading your code. So we're going to say character list, and that's going to be a blank list that we're going to add the other lists to later. And now what we want to do is we want to create two variables. The first variable is going to open the text file. The second variable is going to be used to read the text in the file line by line. So we'll start by saying, we'll say open file equals open. And here we're going to say file name. Now the second parameter for this open here is going to be the mode in which we are opening this text file. And you have a few options. A for append, which is where you can append additional text to the end of the file. W for write, where you can overwrite the content of the text file. The one we're going to go with is R for read. So we're not actually writing anything at this point. We're just looking to read that text into Python. So the next one is going to be a variable called line, which is going to be that open file variable with the read line method. So when you're reading text using Python, you have a couple of options. One of the options is read. Read is not going to serve us very well in this case, because read will import all of that text as a single string, and that's not going to be very helpful. The other option you have is read lines, which would actually work depending on the code you write. However, for today's tutorial, I'm going to stick with read line because I feel as though it's kind of the easiest to understand. So we're opening the file, we're reading the file. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a while loop, and I'm going to say, while there is text to be read, I want you to continue to read and process that text until you get to blank space. So I'm going to say while line does not equal blank space. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the variable that is going to store the information for each character. So I'm going to say character equals a list with their name. We'll say real name. We'll say good, evil. We'll say won, and we'll say lost. So I know that these are not great variable names, but at this point I'm looking to keep everything on the one screen. So just bear with me. Then what we're going to do is we're going to work retrospectively, and we're going to allocate this information line by line to these variables here. And then at the end, we're going to say character list, append character. to create that list of lists. All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to start with name, and we're going to say line, which is the reading the line variable there. And I'm going to say strip. So what is the strip method doing in this case? Well, it might be helpful for us to look at another example very quickly. I'm going to say this here is me, and I'm going to put a bunch of blank space at the end of this string here. Then I'm going to say print string 1 with the strip method. Now if I go print, what you'll find is I'm clicking and dragging my mouse here, and there's no blank space after this me here. So the strip method has taken away all of that blank space there. To prove this is the case, I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to reprint that string. And you should find that when you click and drag your mouse, sure enough, there is that blank space there on the terminal. In the context of our program, this strip here, what we've set as the parameter is a new line. So essentially what this is going to do is it's going to read in this line here, and then once it gets to here, it's going to strip away all of this here. So that's going to work quite nicely for us. Now, because we're using the read line and this variable is outside of our while loop, after we've finished reading in a line of text, we need to actually use this line of code again. So after everything, just a note to include that in there. So next is real name. So real name equals, again, something very similar. So strip, and then we're going to put new line as well. Now the next bit is going to be a little bit trickier. And the reason is that this line here, we want to have these as separate values, or specifically separate items in the list. We don't want to import it as a single string. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to do it this way. I'm going to create a kind of a temporary variable here, and I'm going to say info equals line split. Why split? Well, let's come back here and let's take a look at an example again. So I'm going to apply split to our string here again, and I'm going to print that. And you can see that what we've got is the split method has taken that string and it has created a list where each of the words in the string is its own item. And because we haven't actually set any parameters for that strip method, it's just going off the blank spaces basically. So this is going to be perfect for us. So that's going to create items for each of these things here and not a single string of text. Very nice. So now what we need to do is we basically need to assign indexes from this variable here to each of these variables here. And that's pretty simple. So we're just going to say good evil equals info 0, right? Because it's going to be 0, 1, 2. And the split method is working off of the blank spaces, so we don't need to include these as index numbers, which is really good. So we're going to say 1 equals info 1. We're going to say lost equals info 2. So we have 0, 1, 2. Then all of this information here gets added to a character, and then the character gets appended to the character list here. Very nice. Now, if we run this code, we're going to get an error. And the reason that we're going to get an error is because as our program currently stands, it's not actually going to continue to read lines because our read line or our line variable is outside of that while loop. So here at the end, we need to put line read line again. So I'm going to return that character list, and I'll get rid of this. I'm going to call that function, and here I'm going to set the file name as the name of the text file here. So you should find that this is working quite nicely. So as you can see, we've got lists with every single character's information as its own list inside of another list. Now there's one more thing that I want to do with this program, which is really important. And that is, I'm going to close the text file at the end, outside of the while loop. Why should you close the text file? If you don't close the text file and your program crashes or your computer crashes, you actually risk corrupting data in the file itself. So as good practice, you should always close your text files once you've finished reading them in. And it will not affect the output of the text itself here in this case. Hopefully that was useful for everybody, and thank you very much.